Special board meeting of the Governing Board of Trustees for Romoland School District is called to order at 5:31 p.m. Roll call, Mr. Reller.
Here.
Ms. Heights.
Here.
Mr. Story.
Here.
Myself, Mr. Gary here. Mrs. Moore will not be here this evening. Do you have any public comments for closed session?
No, we do not.
Thank you. The closed session will be called at 5:31 p.m. to discuss conference with legal counsel, anticipated legislation, significant exposure to legislation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of Government Code 54956.9. The special board meeting for Romoland School District have reconvened at 6:33 PM. Was there any actions taken in closed session?
There was no action taken in closed session.
Okay, thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. I'll now go over the governance norms. We agree to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, and work together for the common good. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Just a brief announcement, per CDPH guidelines at specifics to school settings. At tonight's board meeting, there are no students present in the room. And as a result, staff members and board members that have attested that they are fully vaccinated have the option of removing their masks.
Thank you. I'll start with communications, governing board and superintendent governing board. Board of trustee reports, Mr. Reller.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank the staff and the rest of the board for agreeing to hold a special board meeting to talk about a very important topic that's being discussed in our community as well as our state and our nation and throughout the world. So we're here at this special board meeting to discuss the next steps in opening of schools for the 21-22 school year. I'd like to also thank the staff and the legal counsel for researching my questions pertaining to the authority to mandate face coverings in our schools and who is actually responsible for requiring our students to wear face coverings in schools. I don't want to minimize the pain and suffering that has occurred during the pandemic, but I believe we must get back to normal life to prevent future pain and suffering on our kids. Because the pandemic has become such a political issue, and with the absence of definitive research on either side of face coverings, lockdowns, and other restrictions and how these impact the spread of COVID-19, we must look at the data and make the best informed decisions as board members and as parents. For the sake of comparing and contrasting similar data between the Riverside County Department of Public Health and the Center for Disease Control, the age group that I researched yesterday was between 0 and 17. And here's what the data is reporting from Riverside County Department of Public Health and the CDC as of yesterday. I'm sure if you look on the website today, it might be drastically different. Since March 2020, in Riverside County, there have been 41,000 cases of the COVID-19 between those of the age 0 to 17, which is 14 thousandths of a percent. That is 0.014 of 1% of those total cases. The total deaths for those under 17 is 2, and 1 death is too many, which is 5 thousandths of a percent or 0.005% of total cases for those 0 to 17. What's interesting is when you look at the CDC website for the state of California, they don't report any deaths for those between 0 and 17. But I trust the California Department of Public Health's data for 2 deaths. And these deaths occurred during a mask mandate and lockdown. This data shows that kids contract COVID-19 at an extremely low rate, and COVID results in death of someone under 17 at an even lower rate. The percent of cases resulting in deaths from between 0 and 17, again, 0.072 of 1%. In the United States, percent of cases resulting in death between 0 and 17 is 0.01 of a percent. So let's put this into perspective. In 2018-19, there were 483 deaths in the US from the flu for those 0 to 17 years of age. On average, kids nationwide between 0 and 19 there are 12,175 deaths from unintentional injury due to things that include burns, drowning, falls, poisonings, and traffic deaths. Through this pandemic, my belief in the masks and lockdowns and things have grown and changed to make me believe that parents should have the decision-making ability to determine if their children wear face coverings or not. But with that said, I asked our staff to put together some information for us that every board member had an opportunity to read. What our staff and legal counsel found was there was no executive order by the governor to mandate masks in public schools. So if not the governor, then who? Well, the information given to the board falls in two agencies, the California Department of Public Health and Cal OSHA. I will focus on California Department of Public Health since Cal OSHA does not have jurisdiction over students, only employees and employers. So what does this guidance say? K through 12 students are required to wear masks indoors with exemptions per CDPH face mask guidance. Adults in K through 12 school settings are required to mask when sharing indoor spaces with students. Masks are optional outdoors for all K through 12 school settings. So I thought, well, what gives the CDPH authority to establish these guidelines in the state of California? There are no statutes for the creation, and these are this is information again from legal counsel. There are no statutes for the creation and administration and powers of CDPH. However, this is an important topic for us as a board and a community to understand. However, duly appointed health officials at the county and state level issue orders that have the force of law. There is no specific penalty for violation of CDPH guidelines. Orders from the state health officer or local county health officers have the force of law under state law or local ordinances and are therefore subject to prosecution as misdemeanors by the appropriate law enforcement jurisdiction. The enforcement does depend on the local law enforcement agency, such as the Riverside County Sheriff's. However, it is possible that if we are violating the CDPH guidelines, it is possible that state funding could be withheld from an agency found to be in violation of these applicable statutes, which means if we as a school district do not follow the guidelines established by CDPH, there could be monetary penalties. There is also civil liability in a district that chooses not to follow these mandated guidelines and some harm results. So I asked the question, how do we challenge these in court? Well, two options. One, after a violation has been done. Let me read this again. After a violation has occurred and the preemptive move, this is from our legal counsel, to ask for relief of the law. Currently, there are at least two parent civic organizations initiating statewide litigations over various issues in the return to instruction process. So we could file a lawsuit to challenge the law in court prior to a violation. So as an individual board member, I struggle, and as a community member, and as a parent, and as a member of an educational community, I struggle with how to balance this. And understanding that California is an extremely litigious state, and what concerns me the most is the potential liability to the Romoland Elementary School District in someone suing because someone tested positive for COVID-19 when we did not follow the state health officials' guidelines. So we as a community and a board and an educational institution have to balance that liability to the Romoland Elementary School District and the desire to not wear face coverings. And this evening, we're going to have a presentation from our staff and an opportunity for board members to ask questions and clarify where we are moving as a district, so our community completely understands what pressures we are under from the state of California and local health officials in the guidelines that we follow and the procedures and policies we put into place. Sorry for the extended remarks, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood my thoughts before we get into our discussion and our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Ms. Kleitz?
So I'm pretty excited about the start of school next week. That's what I'm excited about. And to see the kids back on campus again. And as a board, we strive on keeping our staff and our students safe and doing what we need to do to keep them safe and keep them healthy, all of them, from the little ones to the big ones. So excited. So excited, and hopefully we'll be able to get out to visit some rooms this year, and it should be fun. And I'm so proud. We have a new bunch of staff members, correct?
Yes, we do.
All right. Well,
Coming them in.
we welcome them because they're at the greatest district in California. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Sperry?
Yeah, I'd like to actually go on the coattails of Mr. Rella. I really appreciate the information he put together for us for his opening comments. Through this whole thing, I've gone through numbers and percentages and things like that. And I really appreciate his breakdown on those percentages, what they really do mean. All that being said, it is a tragic in any family that has suffered from this disease or this virus that's gone around, and it's not to be taken lightly at all. Very understand. Many of us, even my own family, we've had issues with it, and so I am sympathetic to those people of concern, and I think we have a right to be concerned as individuals, and those concerns need to go on your personal preferences. And but I also believe they shouldn't be imposed on us, other people's concerns. But we have different levels, comfort levels, and we should have that right to choose that comfort level. We hear a lot in the communities today when school's coming back in. Are you vaccinated? Are you not vaccinated? That is, again, I believe, is a person's personal choice. It's not should not be in the political arena. That must be their right and their choice to how they see fit to take care of themselves. But on the other hand, they should be considerate to those around them also. This doesn't go without consideration to others and who you're around. I believe that's just common courtesy, human dignity there should take place. So having said that, like I do, I really appreciate Mr. Reller's comments. I'll say it again. I love his numbers that he gave. I'm kind of a numbers guy. I mean, we can twist and bend numbers any way we want. But when we really get those real numbers, what they really, really mean, it is minute. I think we should have that choice. And, but I want to reiterate what he said also, because I agree with it. We are bound by certain guidelines beyond our personal things that we have to abide by. And for the good of the district. And the last thing I'd ever want to do is put this district in jeopardy with any decision that we made that would severely hurt or alter these, because anything that hurts our district, we need to remember, whatever your personal opinion on, anything that comes back and hurts our district, we have to remember that's going to directly affect our students. 100%. It's going to go right against our students. Okay. We talk about litigation that comes out of our kids' learning abilities. That money's like that, and that's really that's the ugly truth to this. In some cases it comes down to monies, and so I believe as a board we're going to protect those kids in this way, and that's all I have. And we're going to have a good meeting tonight, though. I know we are.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sperry. And then myself, likewise, I'd like to thank Mr. Reller for asking those tough questions, and gathering that information. It is very important, and it does make a difference to know where we are and where we stand, because we all want to go back to normal, and hoping that everything does do it in a timely manner. But we have our responsibilities as a board and as a district, and we do have to follow guidelines, but we want to do it for the safety of the kids. So I really do. I appreciate asking those tough questions, getting that information for the district and for the board. I want to move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Aguirre. I just appreciate all the board member comments. You know, public education for the last year and a half, maybe a little bit longer now. Obviously, we've been in a very fluid environment, and sometimes the guidance that we get is very clear, and other times it's not so clear. And it's just something that we're wrestling with right now. What I would also like to take this opportunity to do is to congratulate Ms. Nikki Thaxton. Ms. Thaxton, can you at least go to the podium, please? Thank you. Ms. Thaxton is going to be departing Romoland School District. In fact, her last day of employment is tomorrow in Romoland School District. She is leaving for a promotion to serve as Chief of Staff in a neighboring school district. So congratulations to you, Nikki. Yes. You know, she has been a great support to me personally during her 5 years in this district. But she's also been a great support to the Romoland School District community, right? I hear when people call, her interactions, she's supportive, whether it be staff members, community members, you name it. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees and myself, we'd like to send you off with a nice new plant for your new office and also a gift card so you have, you know, some extra funds to help decorate that new office. So if you could come up.
We'll now move forward to public comments. Is there any public comments?
Yes, there are, just one.
Thank you. We'll now call up this is the Ramona Massey for the RTA and CSCA.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Payton and Cabinet. It's great to be here, even under these circumstances with a small group, but it's good to see everybody. Doing a joint communication again with CSCA and RTA. And first off, we'd like to start by thanking Superintendent Payton for his open collaboration with us over the past months, feels like decades. But we truly believe that we both have, both associations and you have the same goal in mind. And we're looking forward to moving forward with the same open collaboration with the same goals in mind, which is putting our students back into the classroom full time, having our school sites open all the time. And this, we know that we have the policies and procedures that we developed with our safety plan. And it looks like we're going to be implementing a lot of those too, that we can do that successfully as we've done in the past. And we believe we'll accomplish that by those goals of the mask, the hand washing, avoiding using and sharing materials, the self-monitoring, everything that we've already implemented, we've proved that it works. We have the tools, the resources, and we've done our own experiments here that we know we're successful. I don't think this is a time that we should become complacent. It could become a political thing, which we've had many conversations, you know, what is this? But we can't change our path. We have to continue following CDHP as we've done, and we committed to following CDHP we're going to have to do that. Let somebody else be the first one to break the chain, and maybe challenge, as Mr. Reller said, legally what to do. But at this point, I think we believe that the safety for our community is to continue this path. So I'd like us to also learn from our experience from this previous year and improve our expectations and our requirements for both staff and students. If things should alter, we need to have immediate plans of action for any what ifs, so we don't have any stall for our children. We need to make the time to create these plans, and we can improve our capabilities of our staff and our students so that we can push them to excel. So I wanted to thank you for this time, and I hope we can continue to move forward and get the kids in the classroom full time. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the information item. J1, California Department of Public Health and California Division of Occupational Safety and Health updates. Mr. Payton.
Thank you, President Aguirre. We have several cabinet members that will be presenting on various aspects tonight. And really what we're going to be focusing on are kind of some good consistent reminders, but also some changes from when we ended school last year and how it's different going into the 2021-22 school year. There has been some changes from the CDPH guidance over the summer. And so with that, Mr. Bacon's going to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Payton. As we had indicated, this presentation was gathered together utilizing information from the California Department of Public Health, Cal OSHA, as well as legal counsel Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rudd, and Romo. So as Mr. Payton had indicated, we're just trying to look at what's changed since we last gave an update back in June. And to try to make that easy, we're going to go ahead and highlight changes in blue. So underlined in blue will be the changes, so that way they're called out right away. School districts have a 21-22 safety plan requirement, which is the CPP, the COVID-19 prevention plan based on the Cal OSHA regulations. That was already in place. But now we have this additional step of the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. And that must be reviewed every 6 months to ensure that we're making updates as necessary as relates to current conditions. So in this instance, we're talking about cleaning and disinfecting. All throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of focus on cleaning surfaces and disinfecting surfaces. The focus now from the guidance that we've received is that rather than disinfecting all the time, that the focus should be on cleaning instead. And disinfecting really should only be utilized when we have an actual person with COVID, that the area that they've worked in, the things that they've touched be disinfected. Otherwise, cleaning on a daily basis, high touch areas especially is more useful in this situation. One of the things that we want to consider is the chemicals that are used to disinfect and how those can be dangerous potentially to students over time. As for ventilation, we continue to use the MERV 13 filters that we have used all throughout the time that we've had students back in classroom. And we continue to be able to have fresh air circulating through our HVAC systems, even in the event that the air conditioning or the heat is not engaged. The fans are always moving air throughout. For our nutritional services, the guidance has been that we need to arrange for eating outdoors as much as possible. So we have a tentative plan for students to be able to pick up their meals inside while wearing a mask. They can take their meal outside and eat it outside, and they can have their masks off because they're not required to wear masks outside. And then the other update was that there's really no need to limit food service approaches to single-use items or packaged meals. The research has showed that there's very low risk of transmission from touching surfaces. So similar to the cleaning versus disinfecting piece, there isn't as much of a need to focus on single-use or prepackaged meals. So before I transition the presentation over to Mr. Murray, were there any questions about that section of the presentation? Thank you.
Well, good evening. So as students return to school and as our staff return to in-classroom instruction, we're still going to take time to kind of screen our staff and work to monitor COVID-related symptoms. And the symptoms that we have to look for remain the same from last school year. Fevers or chills, coughs, sore throat, headaches. I think one of the big ones would be if you have a loss of taste or smell. We're continuing to look for those symptoms. And if that's the case, we will be looking at excluding students from school because of COVID-related symptoms. The main difference is that we're no longer doing an active monitoring as they walk to campus. We expect students and staff to do a self-monitoring system prior to reporting to the work site or to the school site. We still look for it if we have a person with COVID-related symptoms. We'll still have to require a 24-hour period for the fever to go away without medication. Other symptoms having been improved, but we also have to have a negative COVID test or a doctor's note saying that these symptoms are related to some other kind of healthcare issue. Students that have long-term health issues may fit into that kind of category. But the negative COVID test is an important part of the process. Next screen, please. Because of that, we are going to continue our testing process at our school sites. We're going to still have testing at each of our school sites with the idea of really looking at those who have symptomatic issues, where they have symptoms of COVID, or if they've come into close contact. As the symptoms have not changed, neither has the concept of close contact, but some of our reactions have changed. Close contact is still, within 6 feet of a COVID positive person for an extended period of time, which is 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. But the difference is if you're vaccinated, if you're wearing masks indoors, or if you're not wearing masks indoors. And our responses differ depending on which kind of category the students or staff are in. First of all, we have the group that are fully vaccinated. That means 2 weeks after your first, if you get, which one is it? Which one's the one shot? The Johnson & Johnson, get the one shot, or after you get the second shot for Pfizer or Moderna, 2 weeks after that date, you're considered fully vaccinated. At that point, if you come into close contact, you're fully vaccinated, you do not need to be excluded from school or the work site. Unless, of course, you have symptoms. Those who have symptoms will always be excluded until we determine that they're not COVID-related symptoms or that we potentially confirm that they are COVID-related. So that's the first group. The second group is on the next screen. We have unvaccinated staff or students who come into close contact, but in this case, they're indoors, but they're wearing masks. And this is where the process of going through and monitoring students and staff and determining how long the quarantine period will be becomes a bit more complicated than last year. Last year was like 14 days was the magic number, or 10 days at a certain point. This year, there's a lot of different numbers involved in how long people could possibly be quarantined. In this case, we have a 10-day modified quarantine for those who came into close contact, but they were both wearing masks. That means they're able to come back to school. They don't have to get quarantined outside of the school site. However, there's some other things they have to do in the meantime. They have to go through and get twice weekly COVID testing during the 10-day exclusion period. They have to continue wearing masks. Most importantly, they have to be asymptomatic. If they have any symptoms, that changes the concept of what we look at for a quarantine. But if they're asymptomatic, they meet those other requirements, they're good to go. Now, the one thing they cannot do is continue to be involved in extracurricular activities. Examples would be like the middle school athletic programs, elementary school music, those types of activities. They'd be excluded from those as extracurricular activities. Now, the next group, next slide, in fact, would be the unvaccinated staff or students who are in close contact inside a building, but they were not wearing a mask, which if you think about it, this shouldn't be happening. This is something that should not take place at the school site, but in the event that it does, then like you can look at it right now, there's a lot of different options here. Let's start with those who remain asymptomatic. They may discontinue self-quarantine under the following conditions. The first one, they can quarantine and end it 10 days after the last date of exposure without testing, or the quarantine can end after day 7 if they go through and they get a COVID test after day 5 from the date of the last exposure. In other words, if you're exposed, you have to wait 5 days for your test to take place. If you wait the 5 days and you come back negative, you can come back sooner than if you don't go through the testing process. Now, the next bullet point says to discontinue quarantine before 14 days following last known exposure. And this is once again, asymptomatic close contacts must continue to self-monitor during the period for the 14 days from last exposure. And they have to follow all the recommendations such as mask wearing, they have to do the hand washing, they have to avoid crowds, and they have to do that for the full 14 days. Now, the last little thing here, once again, if any symptoms develop during the 14-day period, they must be immediately isolated. That's the key thing. Once we get to any kind of actual symptoms, then a lot of these conversations change from non-symptomatic, and then it's going to be hard to determine the number of days because it'll all be based upon the individual situation the student is in. But it really shows that it's more thoughtful. It's going to take more time to manage, but it gives a chance for kids to get back to school quicker if they're not exhibiting symptoms. Next screen. So unless you have any questions, I'm going to transition over to Michelle Weiss, or Dr. Weiss. Yes, sir.
Just one quick question on the self-screening. So basically, just one of those symptoms, just to clarify, then you're gonna
Correct.
take precautions.
Exactly that.
Okay, just.
Any of those symptoms.
Okay.
At the very minimum, it creates a conversation between the school site and the family or the employee to determine the nature of the symptoms. And we are on the side of caution by isolating people.
Okay, the reason why I asked about just one, because I don't know if people interpret it, okay, I have 2 or 3 of the symptoms. I just want to clarify, you only have to have one.
Correct.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
And to clarify, like, I'll use the example of a student that may have allergies in allergy season, so they may have a runny nose. But if they can show us that the allergies are a pre-existing kind of thing, that runny nose may not exclude them at that point.
Correct, and that I can understand, and that goes on individual, again, that's individual basis. These things are being determined.
It's the balance between identifying students who are showing symptoms and having kids who don't have COVID, but have symptoms be in the classroom. It's a tough decision at times.
Thank you.
With that, Dr. Weiss.
Good evening, Board President Aguirre, board members, and we're on the topic of masking, which was discussed earlier. CDPH guidance clearly states that all students are to wear masks while indoors at school. However, a big change from last year is that masks are not required outdoors. When students are outside, their masks are optional. There are still medical exemptions from masking, and persons with exemptions are still to wear a plastic shield with a cloth attached at the bottom and then tucked into their shirt. The masking enforcement. All school districts must implement protocols to ensure all students wear masks while indoors at school. This requirement was recently misrepresented in the media with the implication that school districts could choose to not have indoor masking, but that is not the case. Indoor masking is a requirement, and districts must not allow unmasked students in indoor settings unless a medical exemption applies. Thus, districts are obligated to provide educational opportunities for students who refuse to wear masks. Romoland School District offers traditional independent study or virtual program independent study to students who choose not to wear a mask. And there is some new legislation about the independent study options. So the primary option for students and families who prefer off-campus instruction is through our virtual program, independent study offering for the 21-22 school year. Per the recent California Assembly Bill 130, independent study must meet some minimum requirements regarding synchronous instruction. Courses must be aligned to grade level standards that are substantially equivalent to in-person classes. There is to be regular parent-guardian contact and conferencing, and there are specific records to be kept to document instruction and student participation each school day, and those will be highly audited items. Lastly, parents and guardians are to be informed of the option to enroll their student in independent study, and we have certainly advertised the virtual program options to our parents and guardians. School closures. Regarding the potential for school closures, CDPH and County Public Health have not provided updated guidance on this topic. Thus, this slide shows the guidance that was in place as of spring of this year. There is some outdated language regarding stable groups of students. The stable groups were a fixed cohort of students that stayed together through the duration of the school day. but stable groups are no longer mandated. And though we wait for updated state or county guidance on this topic, this criteria at least gives us a starting point if there is a need to work with our local health authorities regarding a COVID outbreak within a school. And lastly, district closures. Regarding the potential for district closure of schools, again, CDPH and County Public Health have not provided updated guidance on this topic. Thus, this slide shows the guidance that's been in place as of spring 2021. And as with school closures, this criteria gives us a starting point if there is a need to work with local public health officials regarding a district closure. Please note, though, that the goal for our state and for us is overwhelmingly to keep schools and districts open. I welcome your questions at this time.
Let's talk about face coverings, masks, whatever you want to call them. So when students get up in the morning at home, they don't have to wear face coverings. On their way to school, they don't have to wear face coverings. When they walk through the gate at school, they don't have to wear face coverings. The only time they have to wear face coverings is when they cross that threshold of that door jamb into the classroom.
Inside a school building,
Okay, or inside to the main office,
correct,
or inside to the locker room, or inside to the gym,
correct.
or the multi-purpose room. Every other time, while they're outside of a building, they do not have to wear their face covering.
That is correct.
Okay, so let's talk about physical education.
Okay.
Kids are going to be able to dress out for PE, wear face coverings inside while they're dressing out, go outside and participate in physical education.
Correct. Yes.
When you're eating, you can have your face covering on. During inclement weather, where do we eat?
We would make plans as much as possible. The guidance is as much as possible to eat outdoors. If there's inclement weather and we have to change to indoors, we know that under the most recent or previous guidance, if you will, it does state that masks can be removed temporarily indoors for eating or drinking.
You
So
can
that
take
would
your
have
mask
to
off.
be accommodated on an inclement weather day if we are to have kids eat inside.
Okay. How about band? Is it required to be outside?
I'm still checking on that one.
Choir?
I'm researching that.
Mhm.
About the singing, you could sing with a mask on.
Mhm.
So there's that. The horns or the wind instruments is what
I'm gonna interrupt. I hope we're not singing with our masks on. I hope we are outside singing if we're in choir. So I think, yeah, we need to be outside. Hopefully we weren't doing that during the other times.
we weren't. But again, to be with the regulations, if they were to sing indoors, they'd have to have masks on.
Mhm.
If they're to sing outdoors, no masks needed.
Mhm.
It makes sense to go sing outdoors.
And Mr. Weller, I would add that, going back to last year, when kids came back the last few months of the school year and they were participating in band, they were outdoors when they had to use the mouthpiece for the wind instruments.
Mhm.
We had a practice area for them outdoors. Obviously, percussion or things of that nature were a different scenario. They didn't necessarily have to be outdoors. It was the wind instrument
Okay.
caveat.
So I'm going to let Ms. Kleitz, I know she wants to talk a little bit as well, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to ask about instructional minutes and inside the classroom for an extended period of time without having the ability to go outside and take your face covering off. How are we going to be able to accommodate or ensure that we're giving our students an opportunity to take their face covering off? So I know Ms. Kleitz was going to talk a little bit and then I'll come back and ask more questions.
So with the band and the choir, and maybe our attorney might know as well, they, like you said, you're still doing research on that, exactly what the guidelines will be. But I like the idea of the outdoor thing. I mean, that's great. Because that was one of my questions too about that. Now, the kids, if they go outside and play, they don't have to take off their masks if they don't want to. They can just wear them as freely as they. Okay, all right. And then maybe I'm jumping ahead, but how about our visitors at our school? I know we're talking about kids here and staff, but how about our visitors at school? Will they have to wear masks
Yes, they would have to. The
Okay.
guidance is that we continue to limit visitors to school, but any visitors would need to wear a mask indoors.
Okay. And so how are we going to prepare for that? Maybe Tommy's mom comes in and she doesn't have a mask on. Are we going to have some masks available and say, oh,
Absolutely.
please,
Yes.
please put on a mask? And okay,
We'll have the signage, we'll have masks available as,
lots of signs saying masks. Okay, great. Thanks.
and community messaging about that.
Of course. We're good at that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Now my turn again. So, Ethan A. Chase, it's a secondary school. We're set up for periods. So kids are inside their class period for 50 minutes and then they do passing period. They can take their face covering off if they choose.
Correct.
It's been my experience that kids have been programmed to wear this darn thing and they just keep it on. But as we get going and they see more kids taking them off outside the classroom, they're going to take them off outside the classroom. Secondary, we're set up to where they have 50-minute class, then a 3-minute passing period where kids can take their face coverings off, things like that, go between classes. Now, if they go in a restroom, got to put that face covering back on.
By definition, yes.
So they have limited amount of instructional minutes where they're going to have their face covering on all the time, like 50 minutes and 47, then 47, 40, so they have some time in between classes to take their face covering off. So what about our little elementary kids? I'm looking at their bell schedules and from 8 o'clock to 9:55 is 115 minutes with these little guys having their face coverings on, little guys and gals having their face coverings on. What are we doing or going to give guidance to principals to ensure that teachers are taking their kids out for a mask break? So if they want to take their face coverings off, they can, but if students want to leave them on, they can do that too. But I want to make sure that our kids aren't inside for 115 minutes straight with a face covering on without the opportunity. Sure, Miss Jones, I need to go to the restroom. Go, you can take your face covering off on your way to the restroom or whatever. So I don't expect you to have an answer right now, but it's something that I think is important for us to give clear guidance to our principals that yes, the expectation is that kids don't sit in the classroom for 115 minutes with a face covering on. They can go outside, like we've talked about outside learning spaces, those types of things, do social emotional learning outside, things like that, to give kids an opportunity to take their face covering off if they want to. I'm just trying to minimize the impact to our kids wearing a face covering. I understand the reason for it. I understand why it's being done inside, and I support that 100%. But we have to, like I said earlier, we have to balance that for our children as well as our community. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that we can look into? And I'm one individual board member, in my opinion, doesn't hold water unless everybody, it's something that we could want to look into.
Right. We're grateful for the opportunity for mask breaks with the new CDPH guidance. As we recollect last spring, kids still had to wear their masks when they were outside at school. So this is a great opportunity for less mask wearing when outside and being able to build in the mask breaks. Or if a little guy is having difficulty, right, playing with that mask or just needs a break from it, hey, why don't you get up, step outside for a few minutes, take a mask break. So those can be done an individual need and whole group and planned accordingly.
And I think that's, good individual needs. My grandkids went to school. They're down by Huntington Beach and Seal Beach, and they went to school all year long on a reduced schedule. And our little 3-year-old wore his mask, Mr. Reller, from 8 o'clock in the morning when he got there until 5, until the parents picked him up because he didn't know any different. And he's 3 years old. And so I think we as adults find them uncomfortable sometimes. And I think our kids don't find it as uncomfortable. But my little first grader, or her teacher implemented a little thing and she needed a mask break. She could go outside, take off her mask by herself, get a little break, get a drink, and then put it back on again and go back in there. And I asked her, I said, her name's Valerie. And I said, so Valerie, did you take many mask breaks? And she goes, why? And I go, well, doesn't it bother you? She's like, but that's little kids, they just get used to it. But if, we have a little option like that for them, but I think the recess is going to be great. They're going to be able to not wear those masks outside. So, kids, or as adults, I think we tend to hate them more than the children. I don't know. So that's just my input.
I would agree with Ms. Kleitz about, the kids they think it's normal to wear these masks all day. And see, that's something that isn't normal. And I'm struggling with this is what are the future ramifications to our kids for wearing face coverings to their health, to their social emotional well-being? That's what I'm struggling with. I'm very fortunate that I don't have little ones. My kids are 27 and 30, and I have grandkids. Those, I know what they're going through, and they're in a different state, so they're not wearing face coverings. But that's what I'm struggling with. Ms. Kleitz has great ideas, great points, and I agree with her 100%, but it's a struggle for me. I'm just grappling with this. And so that's why I go back and forth. I'm struggling.
Well, our folks are committed to kids having, a lovely on-campus experience, and we can still be safe and follow these guidelines and welcome kids. It was great that we got to welcome 70% of our students back in spring, and they all did an excellent job. And as Ms. Massey stated earlier, staff did an excellent job of implementing protocols for safety, and the results were safety. Yes, we know we can continue to do so.
And to your point, Mr. Reller, we will encourage and ask teachers to keep a pulse on their classroom. Like, is it time for the classroom to take a break as a group? Go outside, like as you mentioned, for maybe some learning activity that can occur outside. Maybe it's just a 5-minute restroom break for the class where the kids can, en route to the restroom, remove their mask. And there's also those individuals within the classroom that, we'll teach them to self-advocate, right? Of, hey, can I take a break for a few minutes? I just need to remove the mask and be outside for a few minutes, and then I'll be ready to come back in. And that's a good life skill anyway to teach young children, is to self-advocate for themselves, right? And so that's the messaging we'll be sending to our staff. We don't want them to be viewed as prisoners in our classrooms. Our classrooms are engaging learning environments where we want kids to have fun and learn.
But on a side note, you'll be interested in this. My little people, even my ones out in Boston, they didn't have the flu or a cold all year long. And, but also the hand sanitizer, even the little 3-year-old, he's like, Gramps. I go, what? Sanitizer. I go, it's not, he wasn't like addicted, but he knew that he needed to do it. They have not been sick. So there's pros and cons, and I get that. So I get.
Thank you.
Number on to J2, first reading, special release, board policy update for July 2021. Independent study, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, President Geary. As Dr. Wise covered in the previous presentation, there's been some revised language around independent studies. And prior to being able to offer those independent study programs for this year, boards are being asked to revise and update their board policies as it relates to independent study. So this revised board policy that we presented for your reading tonight allows us to meet the obligations that we have in order for us to ensure that we're able to receive apportionment for the students that we have that are enrolling in the independent studies in the virtual program.
We'll move on to action item K1, second reading and adoption of special release board policy updates for July 2021 independent study. Mr. Bacon.
Sorry about that. Very quick. So this is the second reading. And for the board to consider adopting these revised board policies that will enable us to collect apportionment for the students that we have that are enrolling in our virtual program.
Thank you. Do any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Eller,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Gary, aye. Okay. We'll now move on to board member closing comments. Mr. Eller.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. I want to again thank the staff and legal counsel providing us, the board with a lot of information. It gave me insight to be able to think critically about what we hear in the media. And it doesn't matter what cable news show you watch, because I watch them all, and sometimes it's entertaining. Because you go to one and it says this, and you go to the other, it says the exact opposite, but we have to be able to take the information and critically think about it, make our own decisions as individuals and individuals in our community. And we have to get involved. The board members up here have decided to get involved here at the local level and impact positive change. And I think it's also important for our community to get involved here locally as well as regionally in the state, because I think we're finding out during this pandemic, we need diverse opinions out there to have civil discussions and to come up with decisions and actions that benefit all of us. So I would encourage our community to get involved. The pandemic and the mask guidelines and when the shutdowns were occurring, those were the hot topics, and they're going to continue to be the hot topics. But this just becomes a snowball going down the hill. I would highly recommend that you get involved. Don't just watch one station, watch them all, because now you're going to learn and understand how other people have different perspectives, and you have to understand those in order to advocate for your perspective. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Mrs. Kleitz.
Yeah, just again, like Mr. Reller, thank you to the staff for everything you've done through COVID. And now we're starting back next week. Some of us are starting this week, of course, and best wishes on a great year. A year ago, I said, I didn't have a crystal ball and I didn't know where this was going. And now we have the Delta variant and that thing keeps mutating and I don't know where we're going. But what I can tell you is just to be patient. I think this board needs to be patient as well. I think we need to follow science. I think we need to listen to the experts. I don't have my health degree, so I will listen to the experts. And I'm going to say, hey, go out and get your COVID shot. You don't have it, go out and get your vaccine, man. Help us out here.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Sperry.
Yeah, in closing, I'd like to thank the staff today for the presentation they put together and everything. I really appreciate it. It could be something that could have been, really kind of a downer, but it was actually kind of uplifting, the information we got and all the comments that were made. Mrs. Massey, I appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you too. We don't comment on public comments, but thank you. Okay, very well. Appreciate it. And nobody has said anything, but I will. Nikki, we're going to miss you. And you've been a great support to this district. I will take a quick moment if you don't mind. I remember when I first started, you took over for Peggy Wells, who was fantastic. She was phenomenal, had massive shoes to fill, Peggy Wells. And I think we all really missed her, but you kind of stretched those shoes out bigger. Man, not only did you fill them, you stretched them out. So wonderful job here. Best of luck for what you on your anything you do in the future. You're going to do great. She's a wonderful lady here. They're fortunate to get you. Very impressive. But yeah, answers are out there. I encourage people to get their vaccinations, but it's your personal choice, but I do encourage, I wish people would. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sperry. And then I'll close out saying likewise, thank the staff. I know that following these guidelines is not easy, but as long as we have a plan, it will be simple. And likewise, I'd like to congratulate Nikki. I think she's amazing what she's done for the board. She makes our jobs easy too. So I just want to thank you guys all for being here. And that's it for us. So